Okay, tonight is the 21st of August and is also the 33rd talk in the series of this Majjhima Nikāya. Now we come to Sutta number 79, Culasakuludayi Sutta, the shorter discourse to Sakuludayi. The sutta is a bit humorous. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now on that occasion, the wanderer Sakuludayi was staying in the peacock sanctuary, the wanderer's park, with a large assembly of wanderers. Then when it was morning, the Blessed One dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, went to Rajagaha for alms. Then he thought, it is still too early to wander for alms in Rajagaha. Suppose I went to the wanderer Sakuludayi in the peacock sanctuary, the wanderer's park. Then the Blessed One went to the peacock sanctuary, the wanderer's park. Now on that occasion, the wanderer Sakuludayi was seated with a large assembly of wanderers who were making an uproar. As before, they're talking all kinds of talk. And the Buddha came and then they quieted down. For what discussion are you sitting together here now, Udayin? And what was your discussion that was interrupted? Noble Sir, let be the discussion for which we are now sitting together here. The Blessed One can well hear about it later. Noble Sir, when I do not come to this assembly, then it sits talking many kinds of pointless talk. But when I have come to this assembly, then it sits looking up to me, thinking, let us hear the Dhamma that the recluse Udayin expounds. However, when the Blessed One comes, then both I and this assembly sit looking up to the Blessed One, thinking, let us hear the Dhamma that the Blessed One expounds. I'll stop here for a moment. So this Udayin is telling a lie here. Says, when he's with the assembly, they all keep quiet and wait to hear his Dhamma. He didn't know that the Buddha can read his mind. Then Udayin suggests something that I should speak about. Noble Sir, in recent days there has been one claiming to be omniscient and all-seeing, to have complete knowledge and vision thus. Whether I am walking or standing or sleeping or awake, knowledge and vision are continuously and uninterruptedly present to me. When I asked him a question about the past, he prevaricated, laid the talk aside and showed anger, hate and bitterness. Then I remembered the Blessed One thus. Surely it is the Blessed One. Surely it is the Sublime One who is skilled in these things. But Udayin, who was it that claimed to be omniscient and all-seeing? Yet when asked a question by you about the past, prevaricated, led the talk aside and showed anger, hate and bitterness. It was Niganta Nataputta, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. During the Buddha's days, there were 6 famous external ascetic teachers, and some of them, like this Niganta Nataputta, they claim to be all-knowing, omniscient, all-seeing, etc. But when you ask, like when this Sakuludayi asked him some questions he could not answer, then he prevaricated and showed anger. Udayin, if someone should recollect his manifold past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, etc., thus with his aspects and particulars, should he recollect his manifold past lives, then either he might ask me a question about the past, or I might ask him a question about the past, and he might satisfy my mind with his answer to my question, or I might satisfy his mind with my answer to his question. If someone had the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, should see beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, etc., and understand how beings pass on according to their actions, then either he might ask me a question about the future, or I might ask him a question about the future, and he might satisfy my mind with his answer to my question, or I might satisfy his mind with my answer to his question. But let be the past, Udayin, let be the future. I shall teach you the Dhamma. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. And Udayan said, Venerable Sir, I cannot even recollect with their aspects and particulars all that I have experienced within this present existence. So how should I recollect my manifold past lives? That is, one birth, two births, etc., with the aspects and particulars, as the Blessed One does. And I cannot now even see a mud goblin. So how should I, with the divine eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, see beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate, etc., and understand how beings pass on according to their actions, as the Blessed One does? But Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One, when the Blessed One told me, let be the past, Udayan, let be the future, I shall teach you the Dhamma. When this exists, that comes to be. With the arising of this, that arises. When this does not exist, that does not come to be. With the cessation of this, that ceases. That is even more unclear to me. Perhaps, Venerable Sir, I might satisfy the Blessed One's mind by answering a question about our own teacher's doctrine. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha, since this Udayan, he said, he asked this Niganta Nataputta a question about the past, and Niganta Nataputta could not answer and showed anger. So the Buddha said, if someone wants to discuss the past with me, he should be able to recollect his past lives, like the Buddha is able to, then they can discuss about the past. Or if somebody wants to discuss about the future, he should be able to have the divine eye or heavenly eye and see into the future. But if not, then you cannot really discuss about the past and the future. But the Buddha said, forget about that. Let's talk about this dependent origination. Then this Udayan said, he cannot recollect his past, even this present life also he cannot recollect well. And as for the divine eye, he said he cannot even see a mud goblin, spirit in the mud. How can he see with the heavenly eye? And then he says, when the Buddha talks about dependent origination, and this exists, that comes to be, the arising of this, that arises, etc., he said that's even more unclear to him. So he said, maybe he can ask the Buddha about his own teacher's doctrine. Well, Udayan, what is taught in your own teacher's doctrine? Venerable Sir, it is taught that in our own teacher's doctrine, this is the perfect splendor, this is the perfect splendor. But Udayan, since it is taught in your teacher's doctrine, this is the perfect splendor, this is the perfect splendor, what is that perfect splendor? Venerable Sir, that splendor is the perfect splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher and more sublime. But Udayan, what is that splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher and more sublime? Venerable Sir, that splendor is the perfect splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime. And the Buddha said, Udayan, you might continue for a long time in this way. You say, Venerable Sir, that splendor is the perfect splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime. Yet you do not indicate what that splendor is. Suppose a man were to say, I am in love with the most beautiful girl in this country. Then they would ask him, good man, that most beautiful girl in this country with whom you are in love, do you know whether she is from the noble class, or from the Brahmin class, or from the merchant class, or from the worker class? And he would reply, no. Then they would ask him, good man, that most beautiful girl in this country with whom you are in love, do you know her name and clan, whether she is tall or short or of middle height, whether she is dark or brown or golden skin, what village or town or city she lives in? And he would reply no to each of the questions. And then they would ask him, good man, do you then love a girl you have never known or seen? And he would reply, yes. What do you think, Udayan? That being so, would not that man's talk amount to nonsense? Surely, Venerable Sir, that being so, that man's talk would amount to nonsense. But in the same way, Udayan, you say thus, that splendor is the perfect splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime. Yet you do not indicate what that splendor is. Venerable Sir, just as a beautiful beryl gem of purest water, eight-faceted, well cut, lying on red brocade, glows, radiates and shines, of such splendor is the self, surviving unimpaired after death. I'll stop here for a moment. So here he's talking about the perfect splendor, but he cannot really tell the Buddha what is that perfect splendor. And the Buddha said they are talking nonsense, just like this man who says he's in love with the most beautiful girl, but cannot describe that girl. So he had no choice. He was cornered. He had to come up with an answer. So he gave this simile of the beautiful beryl gem. This beryl gem is a transparent precious stone. And it's lying on red brocade, a red piece of cloth. So in the daylight, it will seem to glow and radiate and shine. And this, he is talking about the self surviving unimpaired after death. That means the soul, in their teaching, the soul is the perfect splendor. What do you think, Udayan? This beautiful beryl gem of purest water, eight-faceted, well cut, lying on red brocade, which glows, radiates and shines, or a glowworm in the thick darkness of the night. Of these two, which gives off the splendor which is more excellent and sublime? And he thought for a while and he said, the glowworm in the thick darkness of the night. Venerable Sir, stop here for a moment. So this beautiful beryl gem that he described, that glows and radiates and shines, that is only so in the bright daylight. But in the thick darkness of the night, you cannot even see it. So how can it shine or radiate? But in the thick darkness of the night, the glowworm that moves slowly, it glows. So at least the glowworm you can see. So the glowworm is brighter than this beryl gem. What do you think, Udayan? This glowworm in the thick darkness of the night, or an oil lamp in the thick darkness of the night, of these two, which gives off the splendor that is more excellent and sublime? The oil lamp, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? This oil lamp in the thick darkness of the night, or the great bonfire in the thick darkness of the night, of these two, which gives off the splendor that is more excellent and sublime? The great bonfire, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? This great bonfire in the thick darkness of the night, or the morning star towards dawn in a clear cloudless sky, of these two, which gives off the splendor that is more excellent and sublime? The morning star towards dawn in a clear cloudless sky, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? The morning star towards dawn in a clear cloudless sky, or the full moon at midnight in a clear cloudless sky on the Uposatha day of the 15th, of these two, which gives off the splendor that is more excellent and sublime? The full moon at midnight in a clear cloudless sky on the Uposatha day of the 15th, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? The full moon at midnight in a clear cloudless sky on the Uposatha day of the 15th, or the full disk of the sun at midday in a clear cloudless sky in autumn in the last month of the rainy season, of these two, which gives off the splendor that is more excellent and sublime? The full disk of the sun at midday in a clear cloudless sky in autumn in the last month of the rainy season, Venerable Sir. Beyond this, Udayan, I know of very many gods whose splendor the radiance of the sun and moon does not match. Yet I do not say that there is no other splendor higher or more sublime than that splendor. But you, Udayan, say of the splendor which is lower and meaner than a glowworm's, this is the perfect splendor. Yet you do not indicate what that splendor is. The Blessed One has terminated the discussion. The Sublime One has terminated the discussion. But Udayan, why do you say that? Remember, sir, it is taught in our own teacher's doctrine, this is the perfect splendor, this is the perfect splendor. But on being pressed and questioned and cross-questioned about our own teacher's doctrine by the Blessed One, we are found empty, hollow and mistaken. So the Buddha shows him how silly his perfect splendor is. Cannot even compare to the glowworm. How is it, Udayan? Is there an entirely pleasant world? Is there a practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world? Noble Sir, it is taught in our own teacher's doctrine. There is an entirely pleasant world. There is a practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. But Udayan, what is that practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world? Here, Venerable Sir, abandoning the killing of living beings, someone abstains from killing living beings. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Abandoning misconduct in sensual pleasures, he abstains from misconduct in sensual pleasures. Abandoning false speech, he abstains from false speech. Or else he undertakes and practices some kind of asceticism. This is the practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. What do you think, Udayan? On an occasion when he abandons the killing of living beings and abstains from killing living beings, does his self then feel only pleasure or both pleasure and pain? Both pleasure and pain, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? On an occasion when he abandons the taking of what is not given and abstains from taking what is not given, when he abandons misconduct in sensual pleasures and abstains from misconduct in sensual pleasures, when he abandons false speech and abstains from false speech, does his self then feel only pleasure or both pleasure and pain? Both pleasure and pain, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? On an occasion when he undertakes and practices some kind of asceticism, does his self then feel only pleasure or both pleasure and pain? Both pleasure and pain, Venerable Sir. What do you think, Udayan? Does the realization of an entirely pleasant world come about by falling away of mixed pleasure and pain? The Blessed One has terminated the discussion. The Sublime One has terminated the discussion. But Udayan, why do you say that? Venerable Sir, it is taught in our own teacher's doctrine. There is an entirely pleasant world. There is a practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. But on being pressed and questioned and cross-questioned about our own teacher's doctrine by the Blessed One, we are found empty, hollow and mistaken. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is making him see that when he practices these precepts, this person, he feels both pleasure and pain. Since he is feeling both pleasure and pain here and now, so it is expected that when he passes away, he will feel both pleasure and pain. So this brings to mind, like the people like to chant Amitabha Buddha's name, hoping to be reborn in the pure land, in the high heaven. But right now, you can see from this sutta, if you are chanting Amitabha's name, you are feeling pleasant as well as pain in this present lifetime. So that being so, it is expected when you pass away, you will also experience both pleasure and pain. On the other hand, the Buddha's disciples, they can reach high states of jhana, where they feel only bliss. In that case, then they can be reborn in the world of bliss. But how is it, Venerable Sir? Is there an entirely pleasant world? Is there a practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world? There is an entirely pleasant world, Udayan. There is a practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. Venerable Sir, what is that practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world? Here, Udayan, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana. With the stilling of applied and sustained thought, he enters upon and abides in the second jhana, in the third jhana. This is the practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. No, but sir, that is not the practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. At that point, an entirely pleasant world has already been realized. Udayan, at that point, an entirely pleasant world has not yet been realized. That is only the practical way to realize an entirely pleasant world. When this was said, the wanderer Sakuludayi's assembly made an uproar, saying very loudly and noisily, "We are lost along with our own teachers' doctrines. We are lost along with our own teachers' doctrines. We know nothing higher than that." Stop here for a moment. So here, Udayan is discussing with the Buddha all this about the Dhamma, and his disciples couldn't understand a word of it. So they are feeling very lost. And they say they know nothing higher than their own teachers' doctrines. Then the wanderer Sakuludayi quieted those wanderers and asked the Blessed One, Venerable Sir, at what point is an entirely pleasant world realized? Here, Udayan, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous disappearance of joy and grief, a monk enters upon and abides in the fourth jhana, which has neither pain nor pleasure, and utter purity of mindfulness and equanimity. He dwells with those deities who have arisen in an entirely pleasant world, and he talks with them and enters into conversation with them. It is at this point that an entirely pleasant world has been realized. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, when a person attains the fourth jhana, the Buddha says, an entirely pleasant world has been realized, not even in the third jhana. According to the commentary of the Majjhima Nikāya, they say, why the Buddha says, at this point, an entirely pleasant world has been realized, they say because when somebody attains the fourth jhana, he goes for rebirth in the third jhana heaven, which is entirely pleasant. But this doesn't seem to have much basis in the suttas. In the suttas, I think in the Anguttara Nikāya, there's one sutta where the Buddha says, when a person attains the fourth jhana, and when he comes out of the fourth jhana, if he sits on a celestial couch. If he walks on a celestial couch. When he stands, he's also like in heaven. When he lies down, he's also like in a celestial couch in heaven. In other words, he's totally in comfort, totally blissed out, even when he just comes out of the fourth jhana. That's why he's as though he's in an entirely pleasant world. Besides that, when a person attains the fourth jhana, the Buddha says the divine eye, a spiritual eye opens, although not for all monks, maybe half of them. And then because of this divine eye, he can see devas and devis and talk with them. So it's as though he's already in heaven. Venerable Sir, surely it is for the sake of realizing that entirely pleasant world that monks lead the holy life under the Blessed One. It is not for the sake of realizing the entirely pleasant world that monks lead the holy life under me. There are other states who die in higher and more sublime than that. And it is for the sake of realizing them that monks lead the holy life under me. What are those higher and more sublime states, Venerable Sir, for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under the Blessed One? Here Udayin, Tathagata appears in the world, Arahant Sammasambuddha. So here, as in Sutta 51, section 12 to 19, the Buddha describes how a lay person hears the Dhamma, and then he has faith and renounces and practices a spiritual path. Having thus abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, a monk enters upon and abides in the first jhana. This Udayan is a higher and more sublime state for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. Again, with the stilling of applied and sustained thought, a monk enters upon and abides in the second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. This too, Udayan, is a higher and more sublime state for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. Stop here for a moment. So here, why is it the Buddha describes the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana? Because earlier he already talked about having attained the fourth jhana. But just now they were talking about entirely pleasant world, that pleasurable state, that pleasant state. The Buddha says it is not for that pleasant state that monks lead the holy life, but for the purpose of attaining these jhanas, because these jhanas lead to wisdom, lead to the abandoning of the hindrances. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the recollection of past lives. He recollects his manifold past lives. There is 1 birth, 2 births, 300, thousands, etc. Thus, with the aspects and particulars, he recollects his manifold past lives. This too, Udayan, is a higher and more sublime state, for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of passing away and reappearance of beings, etc. Thus with the divine eye or heavenly eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, he sees beings passing away and reappearing, inferior and superior, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. And he understands how beings pass on according to the actions of karma. This too, Udayan, is a higher and more sublime state, for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. Stop here for a moment. So you see, you notice here, pay attention here, that actually the purpose of the holy life is to realize the jhanas, as stated very clearly by the Buddha here. Purpose of the holy life is to realize the 4 jhanas, and following that, to attain the higher knowledges, a recollection of past lives, the heavenly eye mentioned here. So some people nowadays, they belittle concentration and belittle the jhanas, and belittle the psychic powers. But that's not what the Buddha says. The Buddha praises the jhanas and praises the psychic powers, saying it is for the sake of this that monks live the holy life under him, to attain the jhanas and to attain the abhinyas, higher knowledges. And also you notice here, before a monk can attain the knowledge of the recollection of past lives, he has to attain the 4th jhana first. After he has attained the 4th jhana, then the concentrated mind becomes purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attain to imperturbability. Only with this state can you get these abhinyas, higher knowledges arise, knowledge of past lives, etc. When his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs it to the knowledge of the destruction of the taints. He understands as it actually is. This is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the cessation of suffering. This is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Similarly for the asavas, the taints. When he knows and sees thus, his mind is liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of being, and from the taint of ignorance. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. This too, Udayan, is a higher and more sublime state, for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. These, Udayan, are those higher and more sublime states, for the sake of realizing which monks lead the holy life under me. When this was said, the wondrous Sakuludayi said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Venerable Sir, Magnificent Venerable Sir, the Blessed One has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, as though he were turning upright what had been overthrown, revealing what was hidden, showing the way to one who was lost, or holding up a lamp in the dark for those with eyesight to see forms. I go to the Blessed One for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. I will receive the going forth under the Blessed One, Venerable Sir. I will receive the full ordination. When this was said, the wondrous Sakuludayi's assembly addressed him thus, Do not lead the holy life under recluse Gotama, Master Udayan. Having been a teacher, Master Udayan, do not live as a pupil. For Master Udayan to do so would be as if a water jug were to become a pitcher. Do not lead the holy life under the recluse Gotama, Master Udayan. Having been a teacher, Master Udayan, do not live as a pupil. That is how the wondrous Sakuludayi's assembly obstructed him from leading the holy life under the Blessed One. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part, you see, these disciples of this Udayan, they couldn't understand a word of what the Buddha was saying, so they could not appreciate the Buddha's Dhamma, and then they were afraid they'll lose their teacher, so they told him, don't go and follow this Samana Gotama, remain as our teacher. So he did not go forth. In this sutta, there are two things about this sutta. One is the comical part. Some of these external ascetics, they are so ignorant. They just keep talking about the splendor, but cannot really describe the splendor. And then the other thing that's more important, this sutta, the Buddha says very clearly, monks lead the holy life under him for a few reasons, for realizing the jhanas, up to the four jhanas, and then for realizing the abhinyas, the higher knowledges that culminate in the destruction of the asavas. That means arahanthood, attaining liberation. Okay, we go to next sutta, number 80, Vekhanassa sutta. To Vekhanassa, thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anatta Pindika's spa. Then the wanderer Vekhanassa went with the Blessed One and exchanged greetings with him. When this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side, and in the Blessed One's presence he uttered this exclamation, "This is the perfect splendor, this is the perfect splendor." Now we have another guy here with this perfect splendor. But Kachana, why do you say, this is the perfect splendor, this is the perfect splendor? What is that perfect splendor? Master Gotama, that splendor is the perfect splendor which is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime. But Kachana, what is that splendor that is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime? Master Gotama, that splendor is the perfect splendor that is unsurpassed by any other splendor, higher or more sublime. Kachana, you might continue for a long time in this way. So what follows is the same as the previous sutta. The Buddha shows him that he's talking nonsense. Yet you do not indicate what that splendor is. Kachana, there are these 5 chords of sensual pleasure. What 5? Forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. Sounds cognizable by the ear, odors cognizable by the nose, flavors cognizable by the tongue, tangibles cognizable by the body, that are wished for, desired, agreeable and likable, connected with sensual desire and provocative of lust. These are the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Now Kachana, the pleasure and joy that arise dependent on these 5 chords of sensual pleasure are called sensual pleasure. Thus, sensual pleasure arises through sensual pleasure. But beyond sensual pleasure, there is a pleasure higher than the sensual, and that is declared to be the highest among them. And this was said, the wanderer Vekhanassa said, "It is wonderful, Master Gotama, it is marvelous how well that has been expressed by Master Gotama. Thus, sensual pleasure arises through sensual pleasures, but beyond sensual pleasure, there is a pleasure higher than the sensual, and that is declared to be the highest among them." And the Buddha said, Kachana, for you who are of another view, who accept another teaching, who approve of another teaching, who pursue a different training, who follow a different teacher, it is hard to know what sensuality is, or what sensual pleasure is, or what the pleasure higher than the sensual is. But those monks who are arahants, with chains destroyed, who have lived a holy life, done what had to be done, laid down the burden, reached the true goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and are completely liberated through final knowledge, it is they who would know what sensuality is, what sensual pleasure is, and what the pleasure higher than the sensual is. And this was said, the wanderer Vekhanassa was angry and displeased, and he reviled, disparaged, and censured the Blessed One, saying, "The recluse Gotama will be worsted." He then said to the Blessed One, "So then there are some recluses and Brahmins here, who without knowing the past and without seeing the future, yet claim, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being." What they say turns out to be ridiculous. It turns out to be mere words, empty and hollow. Stop here for a moment. So here, and the Buddha said that you, because you follow a different teacher, you don't know what sensual pleasure is, or the pleasure higher than the sensual is. So he got very angry. Actually, sensual pleasure, I guess he should know, but the pleasure higher than the sensual, he would not know. So he felt put down, so he got very angry. If any recluses and Brahmins, without knowing the past and without seeing the future, yet claim, birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more coming to any state of being, they can be confuted in accordance with the Dhamma. Rather, let the past be Kachana, and let the future be. Let a wise man come, who is honest and sincere, a man of rectitude. I instruct him, I teach him the Dhamma in such a way that by practicing as instructed, he will soon know and see for himself. Thus indeed there rightly comes to be liberation from the bond, that is, from the bond of ignorance. Suppose, Kachana, there were a young tender infant lying prone, bound by stout bonds at the four limbs, with the fifth at the neck, and later on, as a result of his growth and the maturing of his faculties, those bonds loosened. Then he would know, I am free, and there would be no more bondage. So too, let a wise man come, etc. I will teach him the Dhamma. Thus indeed, there rightly comes to be liberation from the bond, that is, from the bond of ignorance. When this was said, the wanderer Vekhanassa said to the Blessed One, Magnificent Master Gotama, Magnificent Master Gotama. Master Gotama has made the Dhamma clear in many ways, etc. I go to Master Gotama for refuge, and to the Dhamma, and to the Sangha of monks. From today, let the Blessed One remember me as a lay follower who has gone to him for refuge for life. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, when the Buddha, this last part, told him that if really a person doesn't know the past and cannot see the future, yet he claims that the holy life has been lived, that he is not going to be reborn anymore, then he can be confuted in accordance with the Dhamma. That means not likely that this person, without knowing the past and seeing the future, can be liberated. The Buddha said, if a honest and sincere man, a man of rectitude, comes to me, a wise man, I can teach him, and he can attain liberation. And this wanderer probably has a high regard for the Buddha, and then he believed the Buddha and he took refuge. There's not so much Dhamma here. Let's go to the next sutta, which is quite a good. Oh, this is going to be quite a long sutta, but never mind. We try. Number 81, Ghatikara Sutta. Ghatikara, the potter, is a very important sutta, famous sutta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was wandering among the Kosalans together with a large Sangha of monks. Then in a certain place beside the main road, the Blessed One smiled. It occurred to the Venerable Ananda, what is the reason, what is the cause for the Blessed One's smile? The Tathagatas do not smile for no reason. So he arranged his upper robe on one shoulder, and extending his hands in reverential salutation towards the Blessed One, asked him, Venerable Sir, what is the reason, what is the cause for the Blessed One's smile? The Tathagatas do not smile for no reason. And the Buddha said, once, Ananda, in this place there was a prosperous and busy market town called Vebalinga, with many inhabitants and crowded with people. Now the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, lived near the market town Vebalinga. It was here in fact that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, had his monastery. It was here in fact that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, resided and advised the Sangha of monks. Then the Venerable Ananda folded his patchwork cloak in four and spreading it out, said to the Blessed One, Then, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One be seated. Thus this place would have been used by two Arahants, Samasambuddhas. Stop here for a moment. So this place in India where the Buddha walked now, he said the previous Buddha, Kassapa. Kassapa was the previous Buddha to our Sakyamuni Buddha. And later you'll see that actually the Buddha in his previous life had met this Buddha Kassapa, and then he became a monk under him. So it's interesting. Such a long time has passed by in this world. Wherever we are, we can see the past. Many things have happened in whatever place we have been. The Blessed One sat down on the seat that had been made ready, and he addressed the Venerable Ananda thus, Once, Ananda, in this place there was a prosperous and busy market town called Vebalinga, with many inhabitants and crowded with people. Now the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, lived near the market town Vebalinga. It was here in fact that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, had his monastery. It was here in fact that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Samasambuddha, resided and advised the Sangha of monks. In Vebalinga, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sambuddha, had as a supporter, as his chief supporter, a potter named Ghatikara. Ghatikara, the potter, had as a friend, as his close friend, a Brahmin student named Jyotipala. Stop here for a while. So in this sutta, the Buddha is going to recall the past when he was born as the Bodhisattva named Jyotipala, a Brahmin student. And his good friend was Ghatikara, the potter. The potter in India is part of the working caste, working caste, low caste. The high caste is the blue blood, the warrior caste, nobles, and the Brahmin caste, the priest caste. These two are the high caste. The low caste is the merchant class, Vesas, and the worker class, they are called the Sudras. So this Ghatikara belonged to the low caste. But he was the chief supporter of the Buddha, Arahant Sammasambuddha Kassapa. One day the potter Ghatikara addressed the Brahmin student Jyotipala thus, "My dear Jyotipala, let us go and see the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha." The Brahmin student Jyotipala replied, "Enough, my dear Ghatikara, what is the use of seeing that bald-pated recluse?" A second time and third time the potter Ghatikara said, "My dear Jyotipala, let us go and see the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha." And the second and the third time the Brahmin student Jyotipala replied, "Enough, my dear Ghatikara, what is the use of seeing that bald-pated recluse? Then, my dear Jyotipala, let us take a loofah and bark powder and go to the river to bathe." "Very well," Jyotipala replied. Stop here for a moment. So here you see, Ghatikara, he wanted to invite this Jyotipala, his friend, to see his teacher, whom he says is the Arahant Sammasambuddha. But this Jyotipala refused to go because Jyotipala was a Brahmin belonging to a different religion and worshipping the Brahma as the creator God. So he thought of a way. We thought, okay, let's go to take a loofah. A loofah is a dried gourd. Dried gourd. It is fibrous and it's used as a sponge for scrubbing the body. So he said, let's go and take a bath. These Brahmins, they like to bathe in the river, soak themselves in the river 3 times before dawn and 3 times after dusk. So this Jyotipala agreed to go. So the potter Ghatikara and the Brahmin student Jyotipala took a loofah and bark powder and went to the river to bathe. Then Ghatikara said to Jyotipala, "My dear Jyotipala, there is the monastery of the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, quite nearby. Let us go and see the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha." Jyotipala replied, "Enough, my dear Ghatikara, what is the use of seeing that bald-pated recluse?" The second and third time Ghatikara said, "My dear Jyotipala, there is the monastery of the Blessed One Kassapa, etc." And the second and third time the Brahmin student Jyotipala replied, Enough, my dear Ghatikara, what is the use of seeing that bald-pated recluse?" Then the potter Ghatikara seized the Brahmin student Jyotipala by the belt and said, "My dear Jyotipala, there is the monastery of the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, quite nearby. Let us go and see the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha." Then the Brahmin student Jyotipala undid his belt and said, "Enough, my dear Ghatikara, what is the use of seeing that bald-pated recluse?" Then when the Brahmin student Jyotipala had washed his head, the potter Ghatikara seized him by the hair and said, "My dear Jyotipala, there is the monastery of the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, quite nearby. Let us go and see the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha." Then the Brahmin student Jyotipala thought, "It is wonderful, it is marvelous that this potter Ghatikara, who is of a different birth, should presume to seize me by the hair when we have washed our heads. Surely this can be no simple matter." And he said to the potter Ghatikara, "You go as far as this, my dear Ghatikara. I go as far as this, my dear Jyotipala, for so much do I hold that it is good to see that Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. Then, my dear Ghatikara, let go of me, let us visit him. I stop here for a moment. So you see, this Ghatikara, he tries so hard to bring this Jyotipala, his good friend, to see the Buddha. Each time he refused. Asked him 3 times or so, he refused. And then after bathing, asked him to go again 3 times, again he refused. And he pulled him by the belt. Pulled him by the belt, also he refused to go. And then he felt there was no choice. Seized him by the hair, pulled him by the hair. Now this Ghatikara, being a low caste person, is what we call haram, not allowed to seize this, even touch the hair of this Brahmin, because this Brahmin is a high caste. Possibly, if this Brahmin reported to his other Brahmins, they might even kill this worker Ghatikara. So he was surprised that he dared to go so far to make him go to see the Buddha. Then his friend said he's willing. He goes so far because he thinks it's very important to see the Buddha. Then only Jyotipala agreed. So Ghatikara the potter and Jyotipala the Brahmin student went to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. Ghatikara, after paying homage to him, sat down at one side, while Jyotipala exchanged greetings with him, and when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he too sat down at one side. Ghatikara then said to the Blessed One, Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, "Remember, sir, this is the Brahmin student Jyotipala, my friend, my close friend. Let the Blessed One teach him the Dhamma." Stop here for a moment. You see, according to legend, they say that the Buddha in his past life, or Sakyamuni Buddha in his past life, met 24 Buddhas, and each of them predicted that one day he will become the Buddha Sakyamuni, and also that the Buddha in his past life made a vow to become a Sammasambuddha. But you see here that it cannot really be true. If the Buddha actually made this vow to become a Sammasambuddha, he would be very happy to meet a Sammasambuddha. But here you see, he had not much respect for the Sammasambuddha, refused to see him so many times, and eventually when he was pulled by the hair, and when he went, also he refused to pay respect to the Buddha. He just exchanged his greetings with the Buddha and sat down. So this legend is based on the Jataka stories and on the Paramis and all this, which is not in the suttas. It's a later creation. In the suttas we find the Buddha said he looked into the past as far as he could see that night. He probably didn't sleep the whole night. He looked into the past, 91 world cycles, and he said he only saw 6 Sammasambuddhas. In the suttas, there's no mention of 24 Buddhas or 28 Buddhas or 88 Buddhas, etc. Only 6 Sammasambuddhas are mentioned. And out of these 6, our Sakyamuni Buddha in his past life only met one. Met this Kassapa Buddha. And even in this sutta you find that the Buddha never predicted, Kassapa Buddha never predicted that Jyotipala one day would be a Sammasambuddha. So anybody, it's up to whether that person takes the trouble to teach the Dhamma or not. Like our Buddha, after he was enlightened, he actually refused to teach. He wanted to be a Pacheka Buddha, but was persuaded to. Okay, then the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, instructed, urged, roused and encouraged Ghatikara the potter and Jyotipala the Brahmin student with an exposition of the Dhamma. At the conclusion of the exposition, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One Kassapa's words, they rose from their seats, and after paying homage to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, keeping him on their right, they departed. Stop here for a moment. So you see, this Jyotipala When he came to see the Buddha, he didn't have much respect for the Buddha. But after hearing the Dhamma, he was willing to pay homage to the Buddha. That means he understood the Dhamma. Later you see, most likely he just hearing that Dhamma from the Buddha Kassapa, he attained this stream entry. Then Jyotipala asked Ghatikara, now that you have heard this Dhamma, my dear Ghatikara, why don't you go forth from the home life into homelessness? And Ghatikara said, my dear Jyotipala, don't you know that I support my blind and aged parents? And Jyotipala said, then my dear Ghatikara, I shall go forth from the home life into homelessness. So Ghatikara the potter and Jyotipala the Brahmin student went to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. After paying homage to him, they sat down at one side. And Ghatikara the potter said to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, Venerable Sir, this is the Brahmin student Jyotipala, my friend, my close friend. Let the Blessed One give him the going forth. And the Brahmin student Jyotipala received the going forth from the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, and he received the full ordination. So you see, just after listening to the Dhamma by the Buddha Kassapa, this Jyotipala, whom earlier did not have faith, did not have respect for the Buddha, he understood the Dhamma and decided to go forth. It's very clear from here that he must have attained stream entry. Then not long after Jyotipala, the Brahmin student, had received the full ordination, a half month after he had received the full ordination, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, having stayed at Vebalinga as long as he chose, set out to wander towards Benares. Wandering by stages, he eventually arrived at Benares, and there he went to live in the deer park at Isipatana. Now King Kiki of Kasi heard, it seems that the Blessed One, Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, has reached Benares and is living in the deer park at Isipatana. So he had a number of state carriages made ready, and mounting a state carriage, drove out from Benares with the full pomp of royalty in order to see the Blessed One, Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. He went thus as far as the road was passable for carriages, and then he got down from his carriage and went forward on foot to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side, and the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, instructed, urged, roused and encouraged King Kiki of Kasi with an exposition of the Dhamma. At the conclusion of the exposition, King Kiki of Kasi said, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One together with the Sangha of monks consent to accept tomorrow's meal from me. And the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, accepted in silence. Then knowing that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, had accepted, he rose from his seat, and after paying homage to him, keeping him on his right, he departed. Then when the night had ended, King Kiki of Kasi had good food of various kinds prepared in his own dwelling, red rice stored in the sheaf with the dark grains picked out, along with many sauces and curries. And he had the time announced to the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha thus, it is time, Venerable Sir, the meal is ready. Then, it being morning, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, dressed, and taking his bowl and outer robe, he went with the Sangha of monks to the dwelling of King Kiki of Kasi, and sat down on the seat made ready. Then with his own hands, King Kiki of Kasi served and satisfied the Sangha of monks, headed by the Buddha, with the various kinds of good food. When the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, had eaten and had withdrawn his hand from the bowl, King Kiki of Kasi took a low seat, sat down at one side and said, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One accept from me a residence for the rains in Benares. That will be helpful for the Sangha. Enough, King, my residence for the rains has already been provided for. A second and third time, King Kiki of Kasi said, Venerable Sir, let the Blessed One accept from me a residence for the rains in Benares. That will be helpful for the Sangha. Enough, King, my residence for the rains has already been provided for. The king thought, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha, does not accept from me a residence for the rains, and he was very disappointed and sad. Then he said, Venerable Sir, have you a better supporter than I am? And the Buddha said, I have, great king. There is a market town called Vebalinga, where a potter named Ghatikara lives. He is my supporter, my chief supporter. I stop here for a moment. So here you see, when the king Kiki invited the Buddha Kassapa to stay for the rains, the 3 months of the rains retreat, in his place, which he is going to provide for, the Buddha Kassapa refused to accept, saying that he already has a place. Then the king said, "You mean you have a better supporter than me?" And then the Buddha, being so straightforward, he said, "Yes, I have." And he says he has this supporter named Ghatikara. He's just a potter, a low caste man. Yet the Buddha says he's a better supporter than the king. And here then he explains why. Now you, great king, thought the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Sammasambuddha, does not accept from me a residence for the rains in Benares, and you were very disappointed and sad. But the potter Ghatikara is not, and will not be so. The potter Ghatikara has gone for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. He abstains from killing living beings, from taking what is not given, from misconduct in sensual pleasures, from false speech, and from wine, liquor and intoxicants, which are the basis for negligence. He has perfect confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, and he possesses the virtues loved by noble ones. In other words, he is an Arya. He is free from doubt about suffering, about the origin of suffering, about the cessation of suffering, about the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He eats only in one part of the day. He observes celibacy. He is virtuous, of good character. He has laid aside gems and gold. He has given up gold and silver, that is money. He does not dig the ground for clay, using a pick with his own hand. What is left over from embankments or thrown up by rats, he brings home in a carrier. When he has made a pot, he says, "Let anyone who likes set down some selected rice or selected beans or selected lentils, and let him take away whatever he likes." He supports his blind and aged parents. Having destroyed the 5 lower fetters, he is one who will reappear spontaneously in the pure abodes and there attain final Nibbana without ever returning from that world. I stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha Kassapa is making clear to the king why Ghatikara is a better supporter, because Ghatikara is an Arya, third position Arya. So for somebody like the Buddha, doesn't mean this person is a king or is the richest man in the whole country, then he is a good supporter. The Buddha's standard is that this Ghatikara is a man who knows the Dhamma or practices the Dhamma, is an Arya. That's why to the Buddha, this Ghatikara is a better supporter. On one occasion, the Buddha said, when I was living at Vebalinga, it being morning, I dressed, and taking my bowl and outer robe, I went to the potter, Ghatikara's parents, and asked them, "Where has the potter gone, please?" And they said, "Venerable sir, your supporter has gone out. But take rice from the cauldron and sauce from the saucepan and eat." I did so and went away. Then the potter Ghatikara went to his parents and asked, "Who has taken rice from the cauldron and sauce from the saucepan, eaten and gone away?" "My dear, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Sammasambuddha did." Then the potter Ghatikara thought, "It is a gain for me. It is a great gain for me that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahan Sammasambuddha, relies on me thus." And delight and happiness never left him for a half month, or his parents for a week. Stop here for a moment. So here, normally according to the monk's rules, when a monk goes on alms round, the food, even in a house or in a monastery, when they offer food to a monk, it has to be handed to the monk's hands, given personally to the monk's hands. Then only is considered offered. But here, in this case, when the Buddha Kassapa went to Ghatikara's house, Ghatikara was not in the house. And his blind parents, knowing that it was the Buddha, just asked him to help himself. And he helped himself, took away the food and went away. So when Ghatikara came back, he asked who took the rice, and then his parents told him the Buddha took. He was so happy that the Buddha treated him as somebody very close, that even without offering, the Buddha takes it. So he was delighted and happy for 2 weeks, a whole 2 weeks, and his parents were delighted and happy for a whole week. On another occasion, when I was living at Vebalinga, it being morning, I dressed, and taking my bowl and outer robe, I went to the potter, Ghatikara's parents, and asked them, "Where has the potter gone, please?" "Noble sir, your supporter has gone out, but take some porridge from the vessel and sauce from the saucepan and eat." I did so and went away. Then the potter, Ghatikara, went to his parents and asked, "Who has taken porridge from the vessel and sauce from the saucepan, eaten and gone away?" "My dear, the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha did." Then the potter Ghatikara thought, "It is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha relies on me thus, and delight and happiness never left him for a half month, or his parents for a week." Stop here for a moment. So in a similar way, on another day, this occurred again. Again he was delighted, non-stop for 2 weeks, and his parents for 1 week. On another occasion, when I was living at Vebalinga, my hut leaked, that means my kuti leaked. Then I addressed the monks thus, "Go monks, and find out if there is any grass at the potter Ghatikara's house." "Venerable sir, there is no grass at the potter Ghatikara's house, but there is the grass thatch on his roof. Go monks and remove the grass from the potter Ghatikara's house." They did so. Then the potter, Ghatikara's parents, asked the monks, "Who is removing the grass from the house?" "Sister, the hut of the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha is leaking." And they said, "Take it, Venerable sirs, take it and bless you." Then the potter, Ghatikara, went to his parents and asked, "Who has removed the grass from the roof?" "The monks did, my dear. The hut of the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha is leaking." Then the potter Ghatikara thought, "It is a gain for me, it is a great gain for me that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha relies on me thus, and the delight and happiness never left him for a half month, or his parents for a week." Then that house remained 3 whole months with the sky for a roof, and yet no rain came in. Such is the potter Ghatikara. And the king said, "It is gain for the potter Ghatikara, it's a great gain for him, that the Blessed One Kassapa, Arahant Sammasambuddha relies on him thus." Stop here for a moment. So this last part is quite interesting. When the Buddha's kuti was leaking, that means the Buddha's kuti had this atap roof, this grass thatch roof. So because it was leaking, there was a hole in it, and the Buddha asked his monks to get it from Ghatikara, but Ghatikara did not have a store of this dry grass. So the Buddha asked them to remove from his roof, and they did so. And this Ghatikara and his parents were overjoyed. Ghatikara for 2 weeks and his parents for 1 week. And for the whole 3 months of the rains, probably it was a rain season. It rained everywhere except on that roof. Then King Kiki of Kasi dispatched to the potter Ghatikara 500 cartloads of red rice stored in the sheaf, and also source materials to go with it. Then the king's men went to the potter Ghatikara and told him, "Venerable sir, there are 500 cartloads of red rice stored in the sheaf, and also source materials to go with it, dispatched to you by King Kiki of Kasi. Please accept them." And he said, "The king is very busy and has much to do. I have enough. Let this be for the king himself." Now Ananda, you may think thus, certainly someone else was the Brahmin student Jyotipala on that occasion, but it should not be regarded thus. I was the Brahmin student Jyotipala on that occasion. That is what the Blessed One said. The Venerable Ananda was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. That's the end of the sutta. So this last part, when the king knew that the Buddha and the Sangha of monks was going to be supported for the whole Vasa rain season by Ghatikara, he dispatched 500 cartloads of rice, etc. But this Ghatikara just didn't want to accept it. He said he has enough. So he's not a greedy fellow. So this sutta is extremely informative as to the past life of the Buddha. This is the only one sutta in the whole of the Nikāyas, out of 5,000 suttas, that mentions our Buddha in his previous life, having met another Buddha. This is the only one. So you can see from here, you see when we read suttas, there's a lot of implications, we have to think carefully, and then we can understand a lot of things. Firstly, you can see from this sutta that the Buddha, in this lifetime, under the Buddha Kassapa, he must have attained a stream entry. And after attaining stream entry, he became a monk under this Buddha Kassapa. And then from there, he was reborn. This is mentioned in some other suttas. After that lifetime, he was reborn in the Tusita heaven, where he was there for quite a long time. And after the Tusita heaven, he came down as the Siddhartha Gautama, his last life. And in the Vinaya books, it is mentioned that our Siddhartha Gautama, as a young boy, he could enter the first jhana under the jambu tree. And in the suttas, the Buddha says all these meditative states are not attained in the heavens. It is attained in the human realm. Which means the first jhana that the Siddhartha Gautama practiced, he must have attained it when he was a monk under the Buddha Kassapa. So if he had already attained stream entry in that lifetime, and on top of that he had attained the first jhana, it is logical that he must have become a second fruition Arya, a Sakadagamin. Already under the Buddha Kassapa. Now, according to the suttas, Sakadagamin is called a once returner. That means he goes to heaven, then after that he comes back to be a human being for one last time. It's a once returner. He comes back one last time as a human being. As a human being, he must enter Nibbana. That explains very clearly why our Siddhartha Gautama, as a young man at the age of 29, having just married and having just had a son, with such a good family background, such a good life, he just left the parents, even though his parents cried and wailed. In front of his parents, he cut off his hair, put on the yellow robe and walked out of the house. Parents pleaded with him not to go also in front of them. He left. This ordinary person cannot do. It's only an Arya. Because an Arya, his time is ripe already. Just like a durian fruit, a fruit. Ripe fruit, you don't need the wind to shake it. It will just drop by itself. So when a person's time has come, he just has to go off. So that explains why the Buddha in his last life, as Siddhartha Gautama, left and struggled so hard and attained enlightenment. You see, when the Buddha in his last life, he struggled so hard, he could not attain enlightenment until he recollected his past life. When he recollected his past life, then he realized that he had been a monk under the Buddha Kassapa. And when he remembered that lifetime, all the Dhamma that he had learned came back to him. Without the Dhamma, nobody can become enlightened. So when he remembered the Dhamma he had learned, then he contemplated on the Four Noble Truths. Then when he contemplated on the Four Noble Truths, then only he became enlightened. Okay, we stop here. Anything to discuss? Yes. Yes. But You see, it is mentioned that this world cycle, we will have 5 Sammasambuddhas. So 3 have already gone by before our Sakyamuni Buddha. And it seems that all these Buddhas, they appear in this place of India called Majjhima Padesa. Majjhima Padesa, this is a middle country. So in the Ganges Valley. So that's why the Buddha was also around that area, our present Sakyamuni Buddha. That's why when he came to that place, he smiled. He smiled, and then remember Ananda asked him. So they are all around that area. So you see, because of this word Majjhima Padesa, they translated into Chinese as Zhongguo, middle country. They translated as Zhongguo. So a lot of Mahayana monks in their books they say all the Buddhas appear in China because of the word Zhongguo. That's why they have this legend that Mahakassapa is now in deep samadhi in Chicken Foot Mountain in China, waiting for the next Buddha to come. Of course, there's no such thing. The Arhan has entered Nibbana. He doesn't enter Samadhi to wait for the Buddha. So all these stories are way out. Okay, shall we end? Yeah? Do you have any question? Yeah, okay.
That's how the Buddha Kasapa, he himself picked the food from the Ghatikara's house. Ghatikara's house. Does it take different with the whole Indiana?
You see, that's why there are 2 things. One thing is the Buddha made these precepts for the monks, but he is not bound by these precepts. Because you must realize a lot of these precepts, if a monk breaks the precepts, there is no moral misconduct. A lot of these precepts were made by the Buddha just to give a good image of the Sangha. Like the food has got to be offered in the monk's hands and all that. Just to give a good... But the Buddha also said that we should not be too attached to these precepts. Because if a monk is too attached to these precepts, then he cannot become a Sotapanna. Because when a person becomes a Sotapanna, 3 factors are eliminated. One of them is Sila Bhatta Paramasa. Attachment to Sila, rules, and Vata. Vata is all the observances, all the religious observances. All the religious observances. So, the Buddha said we must understand the purpose. Whatever we do, we must understand. For example, these precepts, there is there's a purpose for them. So like in this case, since the Buddha Kassapa is so close to this Ghatikara that he knows that if he takes by himself, Ghatikara is not going to be offended. So in the same way, sometimes like forest monks, there are certain close supporters. Even though there is a rule that a monk should not ask something from a lay supporter unless he has given an invitation. That means he has invited the monk to ask whenever he needs something. But there are certain supporters we know that are very close to us. So we know they are going to be very happy if we ask them for something, provided it's not overboard. It's something ordinary, not something that is too expensive or something. Then if we know this lay person is going to be happy to provide, then we ask, even though he does not give that invitation. So we have to see the situation.
Can you verify that difference about the relation to the
this attachment to rules and rituals is, as I mentioned, that we must know the purpose of the rules and not to follow them blindly. For example, there is a rule forbidding a monk to touch a lady out of lust. So because of that, for example, in Thailand, monks try to have no contact with women at all. That's why when women offer food or anything to a monk, a Thai monk will put out a cloth. He does not accept the thing directly from the woman's hands. He puts out a cloth for the woman to put the thing. But although there is such a rule, but we must not go too far. For example, to me, my personal opinion, of course, some monks may not agree. If I see a woman about to fall down, stumbling, I think I should go and help her so that she don't fall on her face or something. So we have to use our wisdom, not to be so attached. You see a woman falling also, you refuse to help her and she falls on the ground. Or if a woman falls into the drain or something, I need your help, you go and pull her out. Doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a man or a dog or anything, animal. Needs your help, you just help. I don't think so much. You think all your precepts, I cannot touch that woman, cannot help her out the drain. There's this attachment. So we have to use our wisdom. There's no hard and fast rule. No. But of course, having said that, also we have to be very careful that we don't make some excuse to break the precept. Sometimes some monks, they, because our mind is very cunning, you can always think up some excuse not to hold the precept. So you have to be very careful. For example, money precept. Some monks say, this is a modern world, without money you cannot travel and all these things. So it's all right to accept money. But then you must know, even though accepting money is not a major precept, but it can create a very poor image of the monk, bad image of the monk. So also if a monk accepts money, then there's the danger that he will use it in the wrong way to enjoy what he should not enjoy. That's why the Buddha forbade monks from possessing money. You have to be careful. Okay, we stop here.